So here's the triumphant return of this thing. I was gonna make a nice video about how I fixed everything on it over the last week. Put a new heater core in it, new exhaust on it, put a new bell housing on it from the broken Fiasco, U-joint, fixed the brakes, put a new master cylinder in it, fixed the alternator belt, did a tune-up, and it was running pretty good, and then it made it about 6 foot out of the garage here when I was gonna take it on a test drive, and it started rod knocking. So now this is going to turn into a video of me slamming rod bearings in this without doing anything else and seeing if it improves things. So upon hearing the terrible noise, I did what everyone would do and deny it, and pulled the valve cover and tried to find a loose rocker and couldn't find that. And then we thought maybe it was a clutch because we redid that, but it wasn't that. So put it up and kind of thought, boy, the oil pan looks easy to drop. And there it is in the oil drain pan. It took 10 minutes to take this oil pan off in the truck without changing them, or without pulling them out. It's like this engine's where it belongs. And then we found that 3 and 4 were both wiggly. Could shake them. The other ones, there's like a little bit of movement, and like I think cylinder 2, I forget. I don't get my hands all oily yet. But everything else is kind of clean. I'll show you the bearings here. Here's the rod caps and the bearings. So the lower one looks like okay, except for like the chunks of shit in it. And then it's kind of hard to see on camera, but the center of these is like polished and the outer part isn't. And if you look at them from the side, you can actually see like a different thickness in the bearing. They weren't spun when I pulled them, but I don't know if they did at some point, because there's like, I don't know, kind of marks in the back there. Every time I ever pulled out rod bearings that were bad, like they were absolutely ruined. So because these aren't blatantly like spun or have bronze and chunks missing out of them, it's not what I'm used to. They still look kind of good to me, but I guess they're bad if it wiggled. I'll show you what was in the pan here. So here's the goodness in the pan. There's other chunks of stuff. The oil came out like straight bronze, and it was only in the engine about 10 minutes because I did an oil change after the initial oil we put in down in Maryland, or in Delaware rather. That oil coming out was already black after 200 miles. And this oil came out black with metal shavings in it. Other fun thing is the oil filter we couldn't get off down there. We couldn't get off up here either. Had to hammer and chisel, and it took about 3 whole rotations before it came off. So yeah, there's definitely some issues here. Oh, there you can see the metal in it. Look at that. So because I don't feel like going through all the nonsense of finding another engine and such, or pulling this one out and getting rebuilt, I'm gonna try and put rod bearings in it because, like I said, the pan comes off in 2 seconds. And AutoZone actually had a set of rod bearings in stock for 30 bucks. I guess we'll see how this goes. So being that the oil pan's already off and all the goodness is exposed, you just want to take a nice ratchet or whatever and rotate the crank until whatever cylinder you're going to work on is on the bottom. I'm going to work on the front 2, which funny enough are almost over the rear cross member. You can get them from the rear. So now those 2 are down. Now if I get in here without blocking it too much, I can just loosen these rod caps. Oh, there's the bearings. What's up?
I just shoved the spring in my dick.
Nope, that'll happen. Okay, I'm slipping the bearing here, which you probably can't see for shit, up above the crank with the groove hopefully facing the right way. Just gonna take this little screwdriver here and push the rod bearing up into the rod completely. Okay, there we go. So here's the rod cap all cleaned up, just brake cleaned it off. You can see here there is a little notch in the cap and there's also a matching one in the rod. The rod bearing notches into that. Here you go, whoop, 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 there we go, like so. And that's what keeps it from spinning, because it'll actually go up against the rod and it'll hold that there, that little tang. You don't want to have any oil behind the bearing. You want that to be completely clean and dry. But then you want to put assembly lube on the side of the bearing that touches the crank. And this will keep it from ruining the bearing the second you start the engine until the oil pressure appears. Now everyone's gonna yell at me for not plastic gauging this or measuring the clearances and all that, but I don't care. And the other thing is, if it wasn't right, then the motor's junk and has to come out. And if I start this and it still rattles, the motor's junk and it has to come out. So for 40 bucks, I figure I'll just try them and throw them in and see how it goes. And I got the bearing in the rod cap here. Gonna slide this on. Just going to snug them up to start, and then I'll torque them. You get the relaxing feeling of oil dripping on your face the whole time you're doing this. Then I have my Harbor Freight Pittsburgh torque wrench here. I'm going for accuracy, and these get torqued to 45 foot-pounds. There we go. Another rod bearing changed. Just have to do that 8 more times and you're done. the oil pressure. I don't give a fuck. $30. I need to see oil pressure. You got it? Okay. Let me hook the coil back on. Keep it running. What is that fucking noise? Keep it running. Yep, no good. I guess he can turn that off. So the camera didn't record the initial startup after I put the rod bearings in it, but as you might have suspected, it made the exact same noise. It isn't even that it got worse or better, like the noise was exactly the same, didn't even remotely change. So that's kind of odd. So everyone on Facebook was telling me, oh, it's in the bell housing and stuff. I didn't think it was because I couldn't think of anything that would make that noise, like rotating around. And I even kind of looked through the access holes and didn't see anything, but I just said, well, whatever, we'll just pull it just to make sure, because maybe it is. And as you just saw, we pulled the trans bell housing off, even pulled the whole clutch off. The only thing left is the flywheel just so we could start it. Exact same noise. So I'm not really sure what's causing it. I think it might be like a wrist pin. I don't think it's a camshaft is flat or anything, or a lifter, because all the rockers are still tight, and I ran it with both valve covers off and nothing really seems to be slapping around or anything. Everything looks like it's moving like it should. And at least in my head, I would think there'd be a loose rocker if the cam lobe was flat, but who knows. So I guess now the engine comes out. I didn't bother putting the trans and stuff back in, because with that out, now all I have to do is undo the coolant lines and like 3 wires and take 2 motor mount bolts out and the engine's out. It's pretty straightforward in this because there's no power steering, like nothing, like pretty much nothing goes to the engine at all. So I'm just gonna drain the coolant, rip that out, and then I guess I'll make a video of us tearing it apart and see what actually happened. I think I'm just gonna try and fix this engine unless it's something like totally wacky when I get inside of it, just for the price consideration, because I have a lot of the stuff already sitting at home, so I can probably like make an engine out of what's laying around. Ironically, I have the motor out of the blue truck, the 73 C10 that I put the LS in, which when I bought also had a rod knock. So I have 2 engines with possibly bad rods or something. So yeah, I guess we'll just tear this engine out now. Well, that escalated. You can see now the engine's out. Pulled that out in like an hour last night, but the transmission was already off. Took longer to undo the wiring than to do everything else on the engine. this definitely wasn't out before because the wiring's anchored to the block on this thing in like 6 places, and the other small block I've seen has probably been diddled with before, and none of that stuff got hooked back up. So nothing obviously wrong yet. We're gonna put on the stand, take it apart. I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's a wrist pin, maybe a rod is actually at a round. But we'll see in the next video when we tear this apart and try and fix it. Because I'd rather just put this motor back in than find another one, which is probably gonna be junk too. And I have most of the stuff to fix it, I think. So that's where we're gonna go. And hopefully it has a better outcome this time. I mean, I gotta keep a small block in it now because I already put a new white pipe on it, a new heater core, so now I'm committed. So see you next time.